The Honourable Member for Vancouver Quadra.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to speak in support of our Liberal motion today. Canadians understand and appreciate that part of their government's responsibility is to defend the realm, is to protect Canadians and our interests against terrorism and cyber attack. And part of the way we do this is through intelligence gathering. But the way we gather intelligence has changed dramatically in recent years, and our structures for protecting the privacy need to catch up. And I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the men and women of Canada's security and intelligence agencies carry out their duties honourably, and I do not doubt their loyalty nor their commitment to the safety of our citizens. But their job is hard and the world has changed. The very nature of national security threats facing open and democratic nations like Canada have changed. And gone are the days when our greatest security threats were adversarial states such as existed during the Cold War. Today, intelligence agencies operate in a rapidly evolved field of information gathering, where having and analyzing as much data as possible is essential. But this need to collect data potentially can conflict with our fundamental right to privacy. And we've seen this several times recently, including with the Communications Security Establishment of Canada, an agency that is part of national defence, which has been collecting personal information of Canadian travellers who were transiting through Canadian airports. And the member from Malpeque did a very good job of explaining why this is a concern. This data was used to help conduct surveillance operations for weeks afterwards and to track people's activities for the weeks before the data was collected through Wi-Fi users in the airport. And that is seemingly a contradiction to CSEC's legal mandate. This was done without a warrant. Mr. Speaker, it's somewhat, an analogy could be a government spy agency that begins to track your mail. Who is sending you mail? Who are you sending mail to? Where are those letters originating from, and where are you sending your letters to? And where are you when you send those letters? An agency that tracks your mail steams open the envelopes, but says, well, we're not reading the contents, we're not opening it up and pulling out the letter. I don't think Canadians are comfortable with the idea of that kind of tracking. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, this kind of intrusion on the liberty and privacy of citizens is counter to the principles of our fundamental democracy. So to balance this, the need to acquire data, the need to respect people's privacy and liberty creates a pressing need for a robust oversight of CSEC. And it means we also in our society need to have a detailed discussion about how we balance those interests, and thus the importance of our motion. Que la Chambre exprime
that the House express its deep concern over reports that CSEC has actively and illegally monitoring Canadians, and call on the government to immediately cease such activities and increase proper oversight through the establishment of a National Security Committee of Parliamentarians as laid out in Bill C-551, an act to establish the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians.
It is unfortunate that this government appears to be wanting to block proper oversight as is being proposed in Bill C-551 put forward by the member from Malpeque. Mr. Speaker, what is happening in Canada is unique in the Western world, and the Ontario Privacy Commissioner Anne Kevorkian talked about the response in the United States by the President which demonstrates the kind of free and open discussion that their society, the candid discourse that their society is undertaking on the subject of surveillance powers of intelligence agencies. And yet, while they're doing that, and I'll quote the commissioner, our government is maintaining a wall of silence around the activities of CSEC, and this silence is putting our freedoms at risk. So I ask the question, why is the Minister of National Defence not listening to those who are raising red flags and sounding alarms about this intrusion and this wall of secrecy? So this is an agency, CSEC, that is not being given proper direction by its government. And at the Senate committee hearings last night, the director of CSEC made it clear that should the instructions by the government come, that there should be a proper oversight and review by some other mechanism, they would accept that. They were not arguing against the need for that. They were saying there was no political direction to do that. And so that is a failure on the part of this Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's Defence Minister. So Canadians need to have faith in their government that's elected to serve them and to represent them. And so this is an issue of Canadians' trust in our government. And Canadians, I believe, want to be free of unwarranted intrusion into their personal affairs. And right now, they cannot trust that that's the case. One of the senators at the committee hearings last night said that not only do Canadians need to trust, they need to be able to verify that that trust is warranted. And right now they are not able to verify, and they're not able to have trust. The Conservative members of Parliament in this debate have again and again repeated the idea that there is robust oversight, but that is simply not the case. And a range of people with expertise in this matter have commented on that. One of them is Dr. Wesley Wark, who's a professor at University of Ottawa. And I'm just going to read a few comments that he made with respect to our current oversight situation, which is the CSEC commissioner. So according to Dr. Wark, who is a academic analyst on national security and cyber security issues, he said that there has been no commitment on the part of the commissioner to conduct a specific investigation into the airport Wi-Fi project that is so concerning. The commissioner did not indicate a timeline for his, in quote, ongoing review of CSEC. It's taken 3 years for the CSEC commissioner to conduct his first full review of metadata activities, so 3 years. And it's important to note that this was never discussed in the commissioner's public annual report. The CSEC commissioner, according to Dr. Wark, his ability to bring any urgency to an investigation of metadata collection, his apparent unwillingness to engage in a targeted investigation of the airport Wi-Fi project, alongside an abysmal prior failure to challenge CSEC's desire to keep even the term metadata secret, considerably, if not completely, undermines the value of that office as a watchdog. So this is not a robust watchdog. This is a starving, ineffective watchdog, Mr. Speaker. And that's why the BC Civil Liberties Association has filed a lawsuit, the first yet, on this issue, because they are concerned that unrestrained government surveillance processes present a grave threat to democratic freedoms, unquote. And they are filing this lawsuit to force the government to enact specific safeguards to protect the rights of Canadians. These are the very kinds of safeguards that our motion is proposing and that the member from Malpec's bill would provide. According to the BC Civil Liberties Association, in quote, there is no court or committee that monitors CSEC's interception of private communications and metadata information, and there is no judicial oversight of its sweeping powers. Its operations are shrouded in secrecy. So this is ironic that, as the member from Mount Royal noted, that the government cancelled the long-form census based on supposed privacy concerns, a critical tool for understanding the demographics of our country, and yet is defending a secret the secrecy of an organization that is affecting Canadians' privacy. I think most Canadians would be far more comfortable telling the government how many rooms they have in their house than having government tracking their smartphone data and location and follow them for weeks. So, Mr. Speaker, this government must listen to the concerns of Canadians who want their agencies to respect the law and protect their privacy, and I call on all members to support this motion.
Questions and comments? Question et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have to say, with all due respect to my colleague from Vancouver Quadra, to suggest that the independent commissioner of the Communications Security Establishment is not qualified or capable of carrying out his mandate is insulting. That individual is a supernumerary justice that has the skills and the ability and top security level clearance to do the job of evaluating the activities of the Communications Security Establishment Canada and to ensure that CSEC is operating within its mandate. I also want to remind all members of the House, Mr. Speaker, that not only is he looking at, the Commissioner looking at the activities independently of CSEC, but is also making sure that the laws of the land, like the Privacy Act, are respected. And the Privacy Commissioner of Canada has the capability to also do a study on the activities of CSEC and very well may be doing one. And so that is, again, part of the oversight that we have here in Parliament with independent officers that report back to us here in Parliament.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Quadra.
Well, Mr. Speaker, once again, I didn't hear much of a question in the member's comments there. He likes the word supernumerary, and perhaps is so impressed with that word that he doesn't feel that it's necessary to have any actual mechanisms to ensure independence of a commissioner who is appointed by a minister and responds to a minister, political people in the Conservative government, and has no report to Parliament that hasn't been abridged and condensed to the point where it says very little more than, in quote, we are operating within the law. Well, that is not good enough for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. They want to not just be able to trust these agencies, they want to be able to verify, and there is no ability to do that. It's being blocked by this Conservative government and the Minister of National Defence.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Victoria.
I commend my colleague from Vancouver Quadra for her presentation. She talks a lot about trust, and I understand that the model that has been proposed, and one which I certainly support and the NDP supports, is that of a parliamentary oversight committee, such as the Intelligence Committee in the United States, made up of security-cleared parliamentarians. So people would have trust that we would be able to hear the information that is often national security sensitive and act accordingly and be yet better briefed than currently is the case. The Security Intelligence Review Committee is a model that presumably this government has supported. They've appointed Mr. Arthur Porter. That didn't work out well. They've appointed Mr. Strahl. He lobbies for energy companies, and he's no longer there. I think trust is indeed an important issue, and I guess I would ask the member whether she believes that the failure of this government to trust parliamentarians with security clearance is the reason why they are so adamantly opposed to what all of our allies do in this regard.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Quadra.
Well, I appreciate the member reinforcing concerns about trust and the ability of Canadians to trust the government's agencies, and I would my contention would be that this is part of an overall approach by this government, from the muzzling of scientists who produce research compatible with the government's ideological goals, to the oversight of or the spying on environmental groups that may disagree with the government's pet projects, or potentially removing some of Election Canada's oversight powers, because the chief electoral officer found the Conservatives guilty of election offences, this government has responded very consistently with a clear disregard for transparency or accountability or respect for the rights of our citizens and the well-being of Canada's democracy.
Resuming debate, the